Imagine a CEO standing at a podium.
Okay.
Their company just suffered a massive, catastrophic data breach. Microphones are just shoved right in their face.
Every executive's absolute worst nightmare.
Right. And stock prices are plummeting in real time, and a reporter shouts out, well, what are you doing about this?
And if that CEO steps up to the mic and says, we're trying to fix it and make the damage smaller, they just sound panicked.
Yeah, they sound like they're completely drowning.
Exactly. But if they lean into the microphone and say, we are taking immediate steps to rectify the vulnerability and mitigate the fallout, I mean, the entire temperature of the room drops.
They sound clinical. They sound entirely in control.
It's a complete psychological shift.
Hmm.
And it really hinges entirely on the underlying mechanics of just 2 or 3 highly precise verbs.
Because they didn't actually change the facts of the data breach.
No, not at all. They changed the architectural framework of how the public perceives their response.
Which is incredible. And welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are taking a curated look at the hidden mechanics of advanced English vocabulary today.
Yes, specifically, we're tearing into a masterclass on 20 high-level C1 and C2 verbs.
But we are definitely not going to just read you a dictionary, because if you're listening to this, you likely already have a pretty solid grasp of what these words generally mean.
Right, you know the basics.
Yeah. So our mission today is to look at the why and the how. Like, how do these specific verbs act as precision instruments?
Right, how does swapping out a basic action word for a really highly calibrated verb allow you to, say, shift blame or assert absolute dominance in an argument?
Or even completely rewire a professional narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we often treat our vocabulary like this blunt force instrument. We think the goal of language is just to transfer raw data from one brain to another.
Like downloading a file.
Right. But high-level verbs don't just transfer data, they carry embedded logic. They carry causality.
So when you upgrade your verbs, you're actually restructuring the very exactness and nuance of your thoughts.
Precisely.
So let's jump straight into the trenches. I want to start with a really high-stakes scenario.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine you're managing a massive corporate merger, or, frankly, just trying to survive a huge crisis in your own life.
The walls are caving in.
Yes, the walls are caving in. You have to handle the immediate threat. Most people would just say they're trying to lessen the problem.
Right.
But the precision players, they use mitigate or alleviate. And I hear these two used interchangeably all the time, but they operate on completely different timelines, don't they?
They absolutely do. And conflating them is a huge missed opportunity for precision.
So how do we split them apart?
Well, mitigate is fundamentally about risk architecture and impact reduction. It operates on a timeline where the threat is either looming or currently unfolding, and you are stepping in to blunt the force of the blow. So when an engineer redesigns a factory to mitigate environmental impact, the impact hasn't fully realized its destructive potential yet.
So you mitigate a risk. You mitigate a disaster.
Exactly.
Okay, let me test an analogy on you to see if I'm tracking the timeline here.
Go for it.
If I'm driving a car down an icy mountain.
Sounds terrifying, but okay.
Right, mitigate is putting on my seatbelt before the crash. I know the threat is there, and I'm actively lessening the severity of the kinetic impact.
That is the exact mechanism. You are altering the potential severity. Alleviate, on the other hand, deals almost exclusively with the aftermath.
After the crash.
Yes. It is the soothing of existing pain or suffering. You don't alleviate a risk, right? You alleviate a burden that is actively crushing someone.
Oh, I see.
So a government might mitigate an economic crisis through policy, but a charity alleviates the sheer poverty that resulted from it.
Yeah. So going back to the icy mountain, mitigate is the seatbelt. Alleviate is taking an aspirin an hour later when I have a pounding headache from hitting the steering wheel.
Spot on. Mitigate manages the physics of the crash. Alleviate manages the biology of the pain.
I love that. But what happens when you don't do either of those things? Like, what happens when a manager steps into a delicate situation and just completely wrecks it?
Well, then we have the word exacerbate.
And honestly, even the phonetics of that word sound harsh. It sounds like scraping metal. Exacerbate.
It does. And the mechanism of exacerbates is crucial to understand because it isn't just a synonym for making it bad.
It's worse than that.
Yeah, it acts as a multiplier. It requires a baseline of existing dysfunction or pain, and then it literally pours gasoline on it.
Wow.
So an aggressive tone doesn't just create team conflict. It exacerbates a latent tension that was already vibrating in the room.
Like poking a bear.
Right. A supply chain failure exacerbates an existing revenue problem. It takes a negative and forces an exponential curve onto it.
which means someone eventually has to clean up the mess.
Naturally.
And this brings us to rectify. You define rectify as putting something right or correcting a profound error.
Yes.
But I have to push back a little on how this is actually used in the real world.
Okay. How so?
Whenever I read a press release from a company that just got caught doing something awful, they always say, "We are taking steps to rectify the situation."
Oh, yeah.
It feels like a corporate shield, you know? Are they just using a fancy word to dodge having to say, "We apologize for messing up"?
You've hit on the exact psychological utility of the word. Yes, it functions as a highly effective corporate shield.
I knew it.
And the reason it works is because of its etymology and its sterile, mechanical tone. Rectify strips the human emotion and the moral culpability entirely out of the sentence.
Oh, wow. So if a CEO says, "We need to fix our mistake," they are admitting a moral and intellectual failure.
Right, because mistake implies someone's hand was on the wheel and they purposely or accidentally turned it the wrong way.
Precisely.
But when they say we are rectifying the anomaly, they are framing themselves not as the perpetrator of the problem, but as the procedural architect stepping in to balance a ledger.
So it focuses the listener's attention strictly on mechanical correction.
Exactly. You don't rectify a sin, you rectify an accounting statement.
It's a brilliant, if slightly cynical, use of C1 and C2 vocabulary to direct a public narrative.
It really is.
That is just fascinating. You're effectively laundering your own reputation through syntax.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, so we are in this crisis. We are trying to rectify the structural damage, but there is always friction. There are things that impede us.
Yeah.
I assume impede is just another way of saying something is in the way.
It is, but it specifically implies a drag on momentum. You have kinetic energy. You are moving forward.
Okay.
But heavy regulations or lack of resources impede your expansion. They don't necessarily stop you dead in your tracks. They just create a massive drag coefficient.
And then there is the ultimate countermove, the holy grail of problem-solving vocabulary.
Oh, obviate.
Obviate.
Obviate is a masterpiece of a verb
Why is that?
because it doesn't mean solving a problem. It means entirely removing the need or the difficulty from existence.
Wait, really?
Yeah. You engineer an environment where the problem is mathematically impossible.
So if we take my icy mountain driving analogy,
Let's do it.
mitigate was the seatbelt. Alleviate was the aspirin. Obviate is like looking out the window, seeing the ice, and deciding to just stay in my pajamas and do a Zoom call.
Yes.
I have obviated the risk of the car crash because I'm not even in the vehicle.
That is the perfect way to visualize it.
Yeah.
If you invent a new software automation, you don't just speed up data entry.
Mm.
You obviate the need for human data entry entirely.
You erase the step.
Exactly.
Right.
If you construct a flawlessly transparent contract, you obviate the chance of a legal dispute later. You aren't fighting the friction. You are playing a completely different game where the friction doesn't exist.
Man, if you can walk into your boss's office and legitimately claim you have obviated a systemic bottleneck, you are writing your own ticket.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. You've survived the crisis. You've obviated the immediate threats. Now you have to walk into the boardroom and pitch your new strategy.
Right.
You have to build an unshakable argument. You have to articulate.
Yes, articulate.
And actually, before we dig into the nuance of that, I have to share a funny side note from our research for this deep dive.
Oh, the typo.
Yes. When we were looking at the raw source notes, there was a typo. The notes originally listed the word meticulate,
Meticulate.
which sounds like a Frankenstein mashup of meticulous and articulate.
It really does.
And then right there in the margins, the source corrected itself and said, wait, meticulate is rarely used. Let's go with articulate.
It's a great example of how our brains inherently want language to work,
Mm-hmm.
Meticulate sounds like it should mean organizing your words into a perfectly color-coded spreadsheet.
Right. I kind of want to start using it.
Go for it.
But back to reality. Why is articulate carrying so much more weight than just saying someone speaks clearly?
Because speaking clearly is merely about vocal projection and enunciation. Articulate refers to the underlying structural organization of the thought itself.
Ah,
When you articulate a complex strategy, you are building a bridge between abstract, chaotic internal concepts and a coherent external framework.
so it's about the joints and the connections.
Exactly. You're putting joints and hinges articulations into your argument so it can move and function in the real world.
And once you've built that framework, you advocate for it,
Right.
which goes beyond just suggesting an idea. Advocating is attaching your personal or professional capital to a cause. You publicly support it.
Right, you're putting your name on it.
But your reputation alone isn't going to convince a hostile boardroom. You need the heavy machinery of persuasion.
You really do.
You need to substantiate, bolster, and underpin. Talk to me about the varying degrees of weight these three verbs carry.
Well, let's look at them chronologically in how you build a defense. Underpin is the absolute bedrock. Yeah. It means to form the deep, foundational justification for something. Economic stability underpins democracy.
Okay.
Rigorous, double-blind research underpins a laboratory's credibility. If the underpinning fails, the entire philosophy collapses because it's resting on nothing.
Okay, so if an argument is a literal house, underpin is pouring the thick concrete foundation into the earth.
Exactly.
It's not flashy, but without it, you're building on sand. So where does bolster fit in?
To bolster is to strengthen or fortify a structure that is already standing.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be hard, undeniable proof. It's about adding cumulative weight and psychological confidence.
Yeah.
Like a lawyer might bring in character witnesses to bolster their main argument,
Oh, I see.
or a manager gives public praise to bolster a team's morale.
So bolstering is like adding extra steel support beams to the house so the roof doesn't cave in under pressure.
Exactly, but substantiate is the harshest test of the three.
Why is that?
Because it is strictly about verifiable truth.
Yeah.
To substantiate is to provide the hard, undeniable evidence that a claim is anchored in reality.
So substantiate is the grumpy city building inspector showing up to the house with a clipboard,
Yes.
demanding to see your permits and blueprints before you are legally allowed to move in. It's the PICS or it didn't happen of high-level vocabulary.
That is highly accurate. I mean,
Okay.
if you submit a massive travel expense report, accounting doesn't care how well you can articulate your trip.
Right.
They want the receipts to substantiate the claim. It's the rigid verification of reality.
And once you have your house built, underpinned, bolstered, and fully substantiated, you have to make sure people actually remember it. You have to reiterate.
Reiterate.
And I want to pause here because I think people use reiterate when they really just mean repeat. What is the strategic difference?
Well, repeat is neutral. A parrot repeats, a broken record repeats.
True.
Reiterate is a strategic choice to ensure a message survives the noise of a chaotic environment. It is doing it for emphasis and clarity.
Can you give an example?
Sure. When a pilot reiterates the safety protocols during severe turbulence, they aren't just reading a script. They are actively piercing through the anxiety and distraction of the passengers to anchor a critical piece of data.
Wow. So you are fighting the signal-to-noise ratio?
Exactly.
All right, let's zoom out a bit. We've managed the crisis in the trenches. We've built and defended our unshakable argument in the boardroom. Now, we unleash this strategy into the macro world.
The big picture.
Yes. We are looking at massive systems, markets, and human behavior. First up, facilitate versus induce.
Okay.
If I say I facilitated a meeting, am I just using a dressed-up word for I helped?
Not if you are using it correctly.
Okay, what's the difference?
Facilitate implies that the kinetic energy, the desire to act, already exists within the system.
Well, like they already want to do it.
Right. Say two rival companies want to merge, but they hate each other. The desire is there, but the friction is too high.
Oh.
So you bring in a mediator to facilitate. They don't create the desire. They grease the wheels. They remove the barriers so the natural momentum can proceed.
But induce is entirely different.
Yes. Induce is the catalyst.
Yeah.
You are bringing something about that would not have happened organically on its own,
You're forcing it.
or at least sparking it into existence. A massive drop in interest rates might induce a sudden spike in home buying,
Okay, I see.
or a specific chemical induces an allergic reaction. A doctor induces labor. You aren't removing friction, you are providing the spark.
Got it. Facilitate opens the door for someone already walking. Induce is gently or sometimes forcefully pushing them through it.
Perfectly said.
So what happens when these ideas or actions hit the open market? They proliferate or they dilute?
To proliferate is rapid, almost viral multiplication. It's an organic spread that quickly becomes difficult to contain.
Like smartphones.
Exactly. Mobile devices proliferated across the globe in a matter of years, entirely rewriting human interaction. And on the darker side, rumors will proliferate through an organization the second a memo is leaked.
Which brings up a major philosophical pushback for me.
Oh, let's hear it.
Let's look at proliferate and dilute alongside another one of our words. Supersede. Supersede means that a new paradigm completely replaces an outdated one, right? Like streaming superseded vinyl.
Correct. The old is completely supplanted.
So here's my question. In the real world, if a toxic rumor proliferates quickly through a company or a culture, does the truth actually ever supersede it?
That's a deep question.
Right. Do we ever fully replace the false narrative? Or in reality, do we just hope to dilute the rumor with enough facts?
Hmm.
And a second part to that, we always talk about diluting an idea as a bad thing,
Yeah.
like a visionary founder whose brilliant idea was diluted by corporate compromise. But can editing be a deliberate, positive, diplomatic tool?
See, this is exactly why analyzing the mechanics of these words is so vital. Let's take your first point. In a perfect rational world, the substantiated truth would completely supersede a proliferated rumor. It would erase it.
But we don't live in a perfect world.
No, we live in an era of unprecedented information velocity. Once a narrative proliferates, the cognitive bias of the public makes it nearly impossible to supersede.
So what do you do?
Well, the most highly effective PR strategy is often dilution. You flood the ecosystem with an overwhelming volume of counter-data, context, and transparency.
So you don't delete the rumor.
No, you water down its concentration until it loses its toxicity in the public consciousness.
We aren't destroying the poison, we're just diluting the water supply until it's safe to drink.
Exactly. And to your second point about diplomacy, dilution is an incredibly potent tool for leaders.
How so?
If a visionary comes to the table with an idea that is highly innovative but far too radical for the current market to digest, it will be rejected outright.
Right, it's too much too fast.
But by intentionally diluting the radical elements of the vision through strategic compromise, you lower the barrier to entry. You dilute the shock value so that the core structural integrity of the idea can actually survive contact with reality. It is the art of the possible.
Wow. See, that fundamentally changes how I view compromise. It isn't always a defeat. Sometimes it's a calculated dilution to ensure survival.
Exactly.
Speaking of survival and truth, we have arrived at our final 3 verbs. These are the truth-seeking mechanisms of a system: scrutinize, validate, and exonerate.
These 3 map perfectly onto the chronological timeline of any intense investigation.
Walk me through it.
First, you scrutinize. This is not just looking closely. It is an active, aggressive, microscopic interrogation of the facts.
Okay.
An auditor scrutinizes a decade of financial ledgers, looking for a single misplaced decimal. A defense attorney scrutinizes a contract, looking for the microscopic loophole.
You've got the magnifying glass out, and you are actively hunting for fractures.
Right. And you are scrutinizing because you are attempting to either destroy a claim or validate it.
Validate.
Yes. To validate is to mathematically or philosophically confirm the accuracy of a reality.
Like a parking ticket.
At a baseline, yes, a machine validates your parking ticket. But in a laboratory, peer review is required to validate a researcher's breakthrough.
Oh, that makes sense.
Psychologically, a therapist works to validate a patient's trauma, confirming that their experience was real and impactful. It is the cementing of truth.
And if you have scrutinized the evidence and you have validated the facts of a situation, I guess you might arrive at the final systemic correction.
Yes, exonerate.
Exonerate.
To exonerate is one of the most powerful verbs in the English language. It means to officially, formally, and entirely absolve someone from blame or fault.
It's huge.
It is the lifting of a crushing systemic burden, like new DNA technology exonerating a prisoner who spent decades behind bars.
Or an independent tribunal exonerating a captain after a shipwreck.
Exactly. It doesn't just mean, oh, you are free to go. It means the system recognizes that the guilt never belonged to you in the first place.
Okay, let's just take a breath. Look at the massive linguistic architecture we just walked through.
It's a lot.
We started in the absolute weeds of a crisis. We learned how to actively mitigate incoming damage, how to alleviate the suffering that slipped through, and how the true masters completely obviate a threat before it even forms.
And then we examined how to build an argument, how to articulate the abstract, underpin it with bedrock, bolster it against attacks, and substantiate it against the harshest scrutiny.
And finally, we watched these concepts collide with the real world. We saw how ideas proliferate, how mediators facilitate motion, how leaders strategically dilute radical visions, and how verified truth can ultimately exonerate the innocent.
It really is a comprehensive, high-definition lens for navigating human interaction.
And if you are sitting at a desk right now or commuting to a job, this is exactly why you should care. These 20 words are not academic flexes.
No, not at all.
They aren't meant to make you sound pretentious in an email. They are the underlying code of professional strategy. Think about the CEO we talked about at the very beginning.
Right, the data breach.
Choosing to say a process was facilitated, rather than just helped assumes authority over the momentum of the room. Choosing to rectify an error instead of apologizing for a mistake literally rewires the listener's perception of your moral culpability.
Because when you possess precise vocabulary, you can formulate precise strategies. I mean, if your linguistic toolbox only contains the word help, your brain will only look for ways to be helpful.
That is so true.
But if your brain truly internalizes the concept of obviate, your entire strategic vision shifts. You stop looking for ways to fight friction, and you start looking for ways to engineer the friction entirely out of existence.
Which leaves us with a lingering provocative thought for you to chew on. There is a well-known concept in linguistics that language actively shapes thought.
The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, essentially.
Right. The boundaries of your vocabulary dictate the exact boundaries of what you are capable of conceptualizing. So if you consciously choose to upgrade the verbs you use every single day, if you put down the blunt hammer and pick up the surgical scalpel, do you inherently upgrade the way you perceive the fabric of reality itself?
That's the real question.
If you spend your life looking for ways to mitigate, substantiate, and obviate, well, does the whole world suddenly look like a puzzle that can actually be solved?
That is the quiet, overwhelming power of a single word.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next one.